Why, hi there. I'm Ron Chuckett, and I want to talk today about the differences between writing fiction and nonfiction. If you follow me at all or know who I am, I currently write for seamheads.com, a baseball site, and I have great fun doing that. I don't write as often as I probably should, but once or twice a month I do pop out a column. I enjoy what I'm doing. And usually those columns take a little bit of research, come up with an idea. Oh, Jose Canseco walked up, faced such and such a pitcher and walked there. Oh, I think you might be interested in reading about that. Anyway, they take about 40 minutes to do, anywhere between 500 to 1,000 words. That's generally what I shoot for. That's what people want to read online. That's 500 to 1,000 words. Do your research, come up with your idea. By the time that I'm done writing the piece, I finally have an idea of what I want to do. Then normally I don't run that through a grammar editor. I run it through Microsoft Word's grammar editor. You check for spelling, make sure that things aren't obviously misspelled, and then usually my pieces sit overnight and then I cut and paste the next day before publishing. Fiction writing is another story. If you're a reader of fiction, it looks so easy, doesn't it? You come up with a story, a good story anyway, a good writer will take you to a world or a place or whatever, and it just looks so effortlessly, and the pages kind of turn themselves, unless you're Dan Brown and then you just write general crap for the second half of the book, but that's just here or there. Fiction writing is much more difficult than nonfiction writing or columnist writing, which I've done. Long form pieces tend to be more work anyway. I haven't done a lot of long form nonfiction. Fiction writing, obviously there's different lengths. There's the short story length, which is anywhere from 500 words to 20,000 words. There's novella, which I've written a first draft of one that needs to be completely overhauled, which I believe weighed in at about 37,000 words. And then you have novel type pieces, about 50,000 words or more. That's what they want for the NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month contest, which I did last November. And I got 53,000 words into a mystery novel and need to somehow choke out 10,000 more words to finish it before I can then edit, which is a whole other kettle of fish. I hate editing pieces. With doing fiction, I mean, if there's one thing I want to pass along to you as a prospective writer or a frustrated writer, or maybe as a writer just looking for ideas for other writers, is it's important for me to try to flesh out the story in my head before I write. What made the word count work for NaNoWriMo that got me over the 50,000 words in 21 days, and you have 30 if you do it, was I outlined it. And so I knew coming into a scene, any given scene, what the object of the scene was, much like you do when you're doing a test or just writing something for a teacher in school. If you're that, they give you an assignment and you be asked for whatever many words you want to do about it. That's how I got through NaNoWriMo. I created my characters, did some research on what I want to do for characters, did the general research for what I needed to do, for plausibility, weapons, and scenarios and all that. And it was an area of the world that I knew quite well and could kind of embellish around it. So I could do so that part of the research was fine. And so when I came down to it, the only thing I had to do was write. A couple of days I took to actually outline further along or to read through and what didn't work and what didn't work, but I didn't edit. Since then, the couple of times I've tried to write down a story, you write them in your head first. There's two schools of thoughts. There's the outline thought, which is, I guess, my more preferred way to do that. And then there's just sit down, crack your knuckles, really hard in my case, and just write the damn thing out. And that's how I ended up in the past, writing myself into a corner. You realize about after you get the first third of the way through, whatever it is that you think you want to do, that the characters are, you're the puppet master, and the characters are only going to do what you tell them to do. And it's not difficult, at least not in my case, to write yourself into a box where, oops, I don't know how to get out of it without doing this and to make it boring, and I'm tired of writing about these people and I don't like it. So when I did the NaNoWriMo deal, I did the outline, and I got through most of it and was able to concentrate just on the writing part. I don't worry about how my draft looks, and I don't go back and really much of edit anything. If I see that there's a word misspelled, or if a spell checker catches something, I'll look up and try to fix it. But for serious fiction writing, I use a program called Scrivener. I'm going to look at my screen here. I don't have my glasses on. Where is it? Come on. Oh, it's on here. Scrivener. And it's done by Literature and Latte. You can do literatureandlatte.com. And it's basically, it's a basic word processor with outlining capabilities, and also can turn finished documents into things to be compiled for a manuscript. Either you print them off and send them to a publisher, you do that for your own editing, or if you're ready to do something for ebooks. So when I do serious fiction writing, I go into Scrivener. It just made my life a lot easier to have that, especially if you're an outliner. But in the beginning stages of a book or a story, what I do is I call it a doodle. When you've kept time to think to yourself, you tell the story to yourself in your head, and then I write out what I started thinking, then that kind of evolves, and you kind of go from there. And then with the story I've just started, it was like the third or fourth time at this particular alternative history of writing. And there are some things I like about it, and other things I don't like about it, and I'll probably end up throwing the dumb thing out. But at that point, I'll have the basics of how I work a story in my head to at least get an outline out. I know in this case how I want to write the story is going to be as a semi-fake, as a memoir style piece of fiction, and I know how I want to lay it, basics of how I want to lay it out, and then I can go through and do macro blocking, chapter on this and a chapter on that, and then I can go through and break things down into 2 or 3 scenes per chapter, and then just spend a couple days just working through that. And then when I get to the actual writing part, then I already have the basics down. Character A does activity B, and result C happens. It's a very bare bones thing. I think most of my, for the NaNoWriMo novel, I believe was maybe a sentence, a key sentence, and then write the mini story to go through it. Because scenes and chapters should be mini stories, and one chapter should be a mini story. So I believe for the Nano book, it was a chapter was one day in the evolution of the story, and I think I had 3 or 4 scenes in a chapter, and I tried to get to about 2 to 4,000 words per chapter. I don't want it to drag out very long. I don't put a ton of description into things. We don't need to know that the wildflowers 4 fields away were blossoming with the color of lilac that matched the heroine's dress and smelled like the finest perfumes of France. I mean, that doesn't really tell you much of anything. It just kind of pads the word count. And when you're doing NaNoWriMo, you pad word count. You have to advance a story, but I guess this comes down to you have to tell yourself the story, whether you do that in your head or if you jot down the outline, so you know how to tell that story to other people. If you don't know it, and I see this a lot on the boards, on the writing boards, people who want to do alternative worlds. Twilight and Harry Potter has really made people who've read those books want to write those type of books. The Sookie Stackhouse stories, the True Bloods, and all that. The people want to write about vampires, and they want to witches and warlocks in different worlds and whatever, create their own universe, and they get lost in trying to create that universe and get away from telling the story. And remember, if you're going to publish anything, if you're going to write anything that's going to be published, and if you're going to charge money for it, and let's be frank, I mean, yes, this is artistic creation, but I want you to pay for this. Some people will read it for free, including myself, and that just goes there. But if I expect you to pay for this, I need to give you my best work, or what passes for me as the best work at this given time. You have to know what it is you're trying to tell people. And for me, the way to do that is to sit there and doodle and sketch and go, okay, I like this part, I don't like this part. Where does the story actually start? And go from there. If you are a pantser, then you really need to take some paper and write the basic things that you don't have to do a formal outline. But take the basic parts and just put it out there for yourself to read. I mean, it's all for you anyway. You can change it. Write yourself 2 paragraphs of what you want to tell in the story. And, when you feel like going through and saying, oh, the shoreline was jagged and rocky and was 67 miles away from Shiretown, Forest Junction, whatever, and there was a troll there, write that stuff for yourself and then add it into the story. You can still write from the seat of your pants. But when you have those brainstorm things, the reader doesn't want to read that. You need to put that into relatable form instead of trying to describe all the magical mushrooms along the side of the road. Maybe your character stops and eats one, gets sick, or loves it, or goes into a soliloquy about Alice in Wonderland or whatever. A lot of that world building stuff is just for roadblocks for you, so you know where to go with it. So for me, I don't like to do that. That's why I do the outlining. And so when I go out there, okay, it's time to get to work. And what am I writing about today? Oh, you're going to have one character kill off another. Okay, and how do you do that? Well, I don't tend to read back. I kind of know where I am in the story, and I kind of know where that is, and you pick it up where you go until you're done. Which to go back to, which is an entirely different process from the shorter writings, from the nonfiction writings, from the baseball or the golf or whatever else I've done over the years. You kind of those are essays. You pick your topic, you back up your topic, and you wrap up your topic again. In fictional storytelling, you're setting things up for later. But the key is you need to know what you're going to get to. And that will make it easier for the reader to get there if you know. It doesn't mean that you can't change things along the way, or things go off on different tangents or whatever, but for me anyway, knowing that here's my macro points and then here's my micro points, and then writing through and connecting dots and then changing points along the way. Remember, nothing's ever set in stone, even after you get your first draft done. Just makes that process easier. Editing is another story. Don't even go there. So the only thing I will tell you that I'm working on now for fictional stories is alternative history, and it's in the doodle stage. And I'll probably write 3,000 or 4,000 words just to set up, and then I'll discard it, and then I'll be able to go through and start an outline. If I can get the outline done, then, or at least the basics of an outline, at least a macro outline, then that will prompt me to go through and change things around. What normally happens is if I start to bore myself or run out of story, oh, this is such a great idea, you should do this. And you get 2 or 3 days into it, and you go, oh, this is the most boring piece of junk ever. Why the hell would anyone want to read this? Including yourself. If you don't interest yourself, then no one else is going to want to read it, except for your mother, and she'll, oh, that's very nice of you to do this. This is wonderful. Okay, well, it's not, but thanks anyway. So I'm going to do a bunch of these videos as I go through the process, because it's time for me to get back into the lab and actually create something and to get something in first draft form, and then finish the novel I started last year. So the hope is to actually have 2 first drafts of novels done by the end of the year. That'd be kind of cool. And then take some time to polish, and then hopefully to sell, because that's what I want to do. It's base money. You got to do something for work. So we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for watching, if you watched all the way through. And so I guess we'll just call this the first part of a Let's Write series. Let me know below what you do to get through at least the blocks of starting your fictional pieces. We don't need to be published or finished or anything like that. But what do you do to inspire yourself once you get a story on. Be happy to hear what you have to say. You can follow me on Twitter at RonSuckett. Mind you, it's not a lot about writing stuff, but sports and all that when I bother to publish. So thanks very much, and until then, we'll talk to you on the next time.